Welcome to the Butt Fixer Podcast, brought to you by Shane Gentry and John Van Olden. Sit back, listen up, and listen good. You're going to hear it all right because we've already done it all wrong. You're going to hear origin stories from successful people from all walks of life on how they fixed their butts. Have you ever wish your life was better, but do you wish you could make more money? But how about that second language you wanted to learn? But how about that instrument you wanted to learn how to play? But we're going to help you meet your goals and fix your butts. Welcome to the Butt Fixer Podcast. Click, like, subscribe, any and all places where you stream podcasts. 101. I don't know how it happened.
There you go. Okay, man. Let's just go with
What?
it. I wanted to start from silence instead of like people jumping in the middle of us talking, but whatever, man. It's a work in progress.
Nobody wants to hear what we got to say. We don't know.
Hopefully,
we don't know
hopefully
nothing.
I'm loud enough for people.
Yep. Just, you got your oven mitts on?
No, but I'm gonna sit on my hand. I'm gonna sit on my hands. I'll try not to gesture with my hands. Being over here and trying to communicate in another language, it's even worse for me because I'm like pointing and making gestures and this
Right.
and the other to try to get my point across with people. So it's
Right.
yeah.
Do you do that thing where they can't understand you, so you just talk louder?
No, I learned how to do that, but I over explain things, and then going to Holland, they all speak English, and then it's a lot. It's a lot.
It's tough being a damn international podcaster. I swear.
Oh yeah. Coming from all over. Well, hey, so today, in the first podcast, I mentioned my mentor that kind of helped me get my business going, Captain Haggerty.
Yeah.
That guy, I mean, his claim to fame way back when, if anybody out there knows, remembers encyclopedias, he wrote the dog training section of the Encyclopedia Britannia.
Get out of here.
Yeah. He was.
That's a pretty big claim to fame, dude.
Yeah, he was. He judged the German Shepherd group at Westminster year after year after year.
Wow.
His daughter is, I think she's in between your age and my age, and she grew up around dog training. She and I became friends very shortly after I became friends with Cap. Here she comes right here, and here she is. So, Babette, how are you? Can you hear us? We can't hear you. You're muted.
No.
Oh, there we go.
You're in.
Now?
You're in.
Oh, phew. Okay. First day with my new mic.
Yeah, you're a little. It's working good. You're a little loud, also.
You're coming in hot. Faux show. Coming in hot.
Is that better?
A little bit.
A little bit.
That's better. That was better.
That's better. Okay.
Yeah. What do you think? Yeah. Yeah. So I was just kind of setting up. So Shane, Babette, Shane. I know you.
How you doing,
Shane? Great to meet you, Shane. How are you? I've heard great things about you.
Same.
Yeah. So I was saying Babette is pretty much grew up with a leash in her hand, practically, and she has a business. She had a business in. Did you start in Florida?
I started in Florida in '89.
Then went. Florida?
Yeah, then went back to New York. Then I was in Jersey, moved to the suburbs, and then I came back to Florida 2 years ago.
Yeah. So technically, you and I have been competitors off and on for a chunk of that time, since about the 2000s. When we were in Jersey, I think you were almost right next door to my trainer that I worked with in Jersey.
Yeah, I was. Yeah. We were. Yeah, I guess technically we were competitors.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to go around. It's hard to. I mean, at that level, the competitors are the ones that we end up. You and I end up working with the dogs that they don't work. That they can't work with anyway. So we seem to. We don't really seem to notice each other that much.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that your trainer was not one that people were coming to me and saying, I went to blah, 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 and my dog's not trained.
Right.
There were one or two trainers in that area. And every area I've been in, I've encountered that. I constantly get, Joe Blow choke dog trainers' dogs in for training because they weren't trained.
So. Yeah, and I think it's a combination. I think that yeah, sometimes maybe people are out there and they're not quite, their skill level is not quite up to par, and sometimes it's you know the deal. It's probably 75% human and 25. We lost Shane. He'll probably be back on. 75% human and 25% the dog. And if you got to convince them to, you got to be able to convince them to do a follow through. And with it's kind of the rub of the business is you're so dependent on our people doing everything that we ask them to do, or letting us know when they have a problem and that kind of thing. So I don't
that is true.
I try not to bash people too much when you keep hearing, oh yeah, we trained here, we trained there. And I have very good friends, colleagues in the business that I met because I have a colleague in San Francisco. I read something on Craigslist back when that was a thing, and somebody was just bashing him. I always heard good things about him, and I got a hold of him and I said, yeah, I think sometimes clients misinterpret what's going on and everything. And from that conversation, we became very good friends and colleagues. So you never know. Try to keep an open mind.
I agree. I have to say there was one training business down here in Florida when I first started out, and they were my nemesis. They're long gone. The owner passed away before my dad did, 20 years ago. But I have to tell you, I learned the most from them. I mean, they were everywhere. I couldn't get into a vet's office. I couldn't get in anywhere. And they were charging like prices that were just unbelievable. But I learned a lot from them, just how they ran their business. And, and it forces you to improve also, because I'll look at, okay, ABC is, offering this, DEF is offering this. I'm going to offer this,
Right.
So it definitely, competition is good. It forces you to be better.
Well, it's good for the consumer, of course, right?
So absolutely.
Give them some other good choices. So, we want to hear the story of Babette and how you got started in this. I mean, it's obvious how you got started in this business, but you must have. We all. Not everybody follows seamlessly into the footsteps of their predecessor and their parent. So let's hear. I'm gonna turn it over to you, and we'll jump in as we need to.
Okay. So yeah, my story I don't think is so just going back, I mean, I remember, growing up, people were not dog trainers. My dad was the dog trainer, and the only other well-known dog trainers out there were Job Michael Evans, who had been a monk, and Bash, Debra, and Brian Kilcommons. And that was like the late 70s, early 80s. And guess what? They all worked for my dad. Yeah. Not Job, but actually the monks had gone to my dad in the early 70s, and they wanted to send their monks to my dad's dog trainer school. And my dad turned them down. And I remember having this conversation with him years ago, why he turned them down. And you have to remember, my dad had a bunch of I'll say, rogue hippies working for him, because most people weren't growing up to go to school to become a dog trainer. So, back then in the 70s, people were, going out and getting jobs, or they were going to college. And because dog training was barely a blip on the radar yet, he had a lot of hippies working for him, and he had kind of a, not in a bad way, but, these were children of the 70s, and the 60s. So I'll just leave it at that, So it wasn't, like my dad said, it wasn't really an environment that would be conducive to the monks. They would not have enjoyed their time living on my dad's property, because, it was Bob Maida, as it's anyway, it was cool. Sometimes I think God, I wish I was at those parties, but
yeah, really. Right. Wow.
In between Woodstock and everything else,
I mean, they were slightly older by my time, but I went to a few parties with those guys.
Exactly. So all good, I lost my train of thought, which, as you know, John, I'm a little ADD.
Yeah.
So growing up, my dad was the dog trainer, and people didn't grow up to become dog trainers. So when I was young, I wanted to become a veterinarian. And then when I was in high school, I wanted to go into the fashion industry. I worked in retail. Now, mind you, prior to being 16, my dad would take me to work during the summers and on the weekends. And I'd go on these jobs, these movie sets with him. I'd go into his office with him. I'd go to the kennel, and I'd have jobs like answering phones. And I remember my dad used to kind of yell at his employees a little bit sometimes, because he said that I took better messages at like 10 years of age than some of his employees. And that was because my mom, in her era, she grew up and then she went to secretarial school. So, you'd take a message, who was calling, you'd spell everything out, the time, etc., the date that they called and what the call was regarding. Because of course, this was way before cell phones and texting. So, I was at 10 years of age, I was walking dogs, I was shoveling poop, and I was taking phone calls. And so working for my dad was a great gig, because he would wake me up at the butt crack of dawn, and he'd pay me $2 an hour from the time I woke up to the time he brought me home at night, which was often, 10 o'clock at night. So,
Wow, that's not bad.
No, it wasn't. And you know what? With my dad, you always ate well.
Yeah.
So what else would I have been doing? Going to the town pool or playing kickball in the street with the kids, So then when I got to high school, and then I got a real job at 16, I wanted to make it big in the fashion business. I worked for the Gap, and, I lived outside of New York City, and I was going to go to FIT and blah, 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 blah. And anyway, fast forward, I ended up moving here to Florida. And even when I was going to make it big in the fashion industry, I loved working, and I would always work maybe 2 jobs. So I would fill in for my dad a lot of times. And so even through high school and, college, I was working for him. And then when I was 21, I can't tell you how many times I changed my major, how many colleges I went to. I came down here and I was in Florida, and my mom and I went to a dog show. My parents had split up at that point. I went to a dog show with my mom, and I really missed being around all of the dogs. And I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I quit the thought of making it big in the fashion world. It wasn't for me anymore after a retail stint. And I called up my dad and I said, I'm going to breed dogs. And he said, there's no money in that. Be a dog trainer. And I thought, nobody's a dog trainer. You're the dog trainer. Like, no one else is supposed to be the dog trainer. And I'll never forget. It was December. It was early December. Next thing I know, he booked a plane ticket and he came down and he bought me the Atlas of Dog Breeds, this book. It's like 4 inches thick.
Yeah.
And he sat down with me and he gave me a crash course getting me started, bought me business cards. He took an ad out. If you remember, I think they still have it. Remember the TV guide in the newspaper? Back in the day, not the magazine TV guide, the one that you'd get for free with your Sunday paper. And they had, a professional directory, services directory. And he took out an ad in that for me. I don't know how much it cost, but I remember it got me like a job a month. And, because I knew how to train dogs from working with my dad. It was like kind of osmosis. And next thing you know, I'm like getting phone calls for dog training. And next thing I knew, I had the largest dog training business in Palm Beach County. And I mean, it took some time. I mean, it wasn't, believe me, that wasn't overnight. It was a lot of hustling, and it was a lot of like going up against this big company. It was called Canine Counselors. And they were also a franchise. And, I had to hustle my butt off to take to put a damper on their business. And,
are we still talking pre-internet, right?
Oh, totally pre-internet.
Yeah,
this was Yellow Page ads. You have to get in. And of course I was B, so I got in before Canine Counselors, but Canine Counselors also had the bigger budget. So they were taking out the huge ads. So it was, it was pre-internet. And this was the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. So
Yeah, that was how I found your dad in the LA phone book when I tracked him down. So it was,
Yeah.
and he had an, and I think I know you heard the podcast, his answering machine. So if you are a
Love
telephones
that.
listener, hang up now. I know you
Yes.
remember that. Yeah, yeah,
I
so
do.
funny.
He always had funny answering machine messages. He told me one time, he would say, what was it? We're out in the fields training right now. Please leave a message. And I said something to him about it. I don't remember exactly. He said, well, if you're out in the field training right now, it covers a multitude of sins. I'm like, okay.
All right.
Sounds like a fun dude.
Oh,
Yeah,
my
he
dad
was
was a character for
Yeah.
sure. Quite the character.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I ended up training dogs.
Yeah, and so but you knew, I got to know these folks from later on in life. I mean, Brian Kilcommons
Yeah.
and Bash Debra and gosh, there was the one that came up. Well, he trained Matthew Margulies, right?
Oh yeah, Matt.
Uncle
Absolutely.
Matty,
Uncle Matty.
Uncle Matty had a TV show on PBS in San Francisco. I do remember
Mm.
that, and
Wow.
I know that Margulies trained Maurice Sindak's dog.
Oh
way
yes,
back
yes. I remember that story.
So
Yes.
I always remember that Maurice. I don't know if you must know that Maurice Sindak wrote a children's book about dog
Yep.
training. Yeah. So which I have.
No.
Oh, I'll send it to you, internet. I have a first edition of that book, actually.
No kidding. That's awesome. I had no idea. I just
Yeah, it's really odd. Well, Maurice Sendak, but it's a really odd, like, cartoon book about two kids that get a dog, and then there's like an angel dog that kind of guides them through how to train this. It's called Some Great Pup.
no way. I had no
Yeah.
idea. I can't believe that
funny.
never crossed my path.
Yeah, how funny. Yeah, it's interesting.
That is funny.
So I mean, who isn't a big Maurice Sendak fan? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, things are absolutely.
So what's like the so what do you got? So you're still at it. How many years now?
I'm still at it.
Yes, 89 to now.
89. So
yeah.
what are we? Yeah, so that's 35 years. 35
35
years.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Oh,
That's
thanks.
That's an amazing run.
Thanks. It is. It's been amazing. I mean, I'm so grateful. I'll never forget my dad said to me, and I think this was the summer that you met him, John, because remember I had mentioned to you that I was with him for a summer. Well, it was like 6 weeks I went out there, and we were showing his Malinois. And I remember when I was getting ready to leave, he's like, "Oh, some guy, he's like coming down from San Francisco and he wants to train dogs, we'll see. I'm going out to lunch with him next week, And he was just like, and those little conversations just in your brain. And he's like, it's a long drive to come down, And I was like, yeah, whatever, Dad, but that summer, he had said to me, I remember he was in his bedroom and he's putting on his socks, and I don't know what I said that prompted it, but he said to me, well, if I leave you with nothing else, I will have left you with a way to make a buck.
That's true.
And you know what? God bless him, because the turns my life took, I can't tell you how many times I'm so grateful that I'm a dog trainer, because if I had a corporate job, I would have been screwed.
And a boss.
And a boss.
And job interviews, and because I know you pulled up stakes a few times, right? I mean, from Florida, Jersey, Manhattan, back to Florida.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
How did you? I mean, how did you get when you moved? So you started in Florida, then you went to New York. Is that right?
Yeah, I went to New York City,
Manhattan. And so are we still pre-internet?
No. So I moved, and this is one of my, I'll talk about that too, because it's kind of one of my butts. Not kind of, it's definitely one of my butts. So I moved back to New York City in 2007. So that it was like, I'm not gonna say it was pre-Facebook, it was pre-Facebook for me. But it was just, Facebook was just starting to gain ground. So we had the internet, but, people were, and I had a website when I left Florida. Most people were finding me from word of mouth anyway.
Okay.
So it wasn't so much, it was still like, yeah, I was at the baseball game the other night and somebody told me to call you, or, and also at that point when I left Florida, I was so well known in Palm Beach County that it was like, sometimes I hated it because if I was wearing a company shirt, somebody would stop me and be like, oh, you trained my neighbor's dog. And they're like, can we talk about my dog? And, it was like, you got to the point where like everywhere you went, somebody knew you, which was wonderful. And at the same time, it was draining in some ways. But anyway, where was I going with that?
So you left Florida? Yeah.
Oh, so I left Florida. Yeah. So I left Florida and I ended up in New York City. And what had happened was, I'll just get into the story. So in 2007, my marriage was on the rocks. And my aunt needed surgery. She used to come down and spend her winters with us. And she needed surgery and she was going to put off the surgery. My kids were young. My kids were going on 3 and going on 7. Yeah, going on 3 and going on 7. And she was going to put off her surgery because she wanted to spend Christmas with the kids. And she was going to wait until the spring. And I said, look, and at that time, my aunt was like 70 something. I said, you're in your 3rd floor walk up. You can't leave your apartment because you're in so much pain. I've got to get out of this house. Let me come up and I'll help you get through the surgery. We'll stay there for a couple of months. And then after Westminster in February, I'll come back to Florida. I'm going to file for divorce and put the house up for sale. And she said, okay. So the kids and I get in the car. I'll never forget this. It was December 4th. My dad's birthday is December 3rd. I had a group class that was graduating December 3rd, and load up the car on December 4th with my kids and my 17-year-old dog. And, my plan is I'm going to get in the car. I'm going to go to New York. We're going to have this little adventure. We're going to have an adventure, kids. And we'll be back in February. And an hour and a half into the car ride, my daughter had a seizure. And just to back up a little bit, my daughter had been diagnosed as being legally blind when she was like 4 or 5 months of age. So we always knew she had this vision issue. So she has this seizure. They come, we go to an ambulance. We end up at the hospital in Orlando. We're there, and they said, we have no idea what's wrong with your daughter. And yeah, so you need to get on a plane and you need to get to New York City. You cannot drive to New York City. You have to fly to New York City. And we're not discharging you until you have this appointment, and this appointment in New York City, and you have a plane ticket in hand. So I was like, all right. So, we had the internet, thank God, because I'm looking up, okay, Cornell Medical Center, which was right near my aunt, book the appointments, book the flights, go back. I was like, I got the ticket, I got the appointments. And they look at me and they said, how did you do that so quickly? I'm like, I don't know. You just told me to do it. I, went online, found the phone numbers and made appointments. And, so we got off the plane. That was December 12th, 2007. The next morning we went to our first appointment and they took some more blood. And then we went to the next appointment. And a few hours later, the first appointment calls me up. She says, meet me in the ER. I'm admitting your daughter. And I was like, oh. Now, mind you, let me just back up. So, I was supposed to go help my aunt with her surgery. By the time December 12th rolled around, my aunt already had gotten to the hospital, already had her surgery. She was already in rehab. Like, I wasn't much of a help. So anyway, fast forward, that's how I ended up back in New York, because they were trying to figure out what was wrong with her. And they said to me, 6 weeks in, they said, when we discharge her, because we were there in the hospital, when we discharge your daughter, where are you going to live? And I just looked at them and I knew what answer they wanted. And I said, walking distance to this hospital. And they're like, bingo. That's the answer we want to hear. So I pretty much, when I had left Florida that December 2007, I wasn't planning on walking away from my business. I mean, I had a great business. I was doing very well. And so that's how I ended up in New York City. And that's why I say so much that I'm so lucky that I was a dog trainer, because, what company would have let me stay out for 6 weeks at a time. And for the next year and a half, I was walking dogs for a little bit. Like I was just throwing my name out there. I needed money. My ex-husband, let's just say that, I was financially in a dilemma. So, and not only that, but like, it wasn't like I could go out and get a job because my daughter was in and out of the hospital, like she'd go into crisis. I'd have to rush her to the ER, and I was juggling my kids, and it wasn't a highlight of life.
Well, it's a catch-22 to get a job because, like, with what work history?
Well, that's true too. That's true.
What's your resume say? So I did some retail back about 20 years ago, and now
I trained my dogs with my dad.
I
got a 20-year job. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I got a college degree, and I don't know what I ended up getting, a marketing major.
Yeah, crazy.
So
yeah. So so what'd you do? You're walking dogs, probably hitting up vets. Had the internet going on. I bet you got a little bit of help just from your name, didn't you? I mean, people would.
I did. Yeah. Actually, it was kind of funny how many people I ran into in New York City whose dogs my dad had trained. Mm-hmm. And I had quite a few people who would call me up and say, "Are you any relation to Captain Haggerty?" Yep, that was my dad, because he had passed at that point, and they hired me to train their dog. Yeah. So I definitely had that. That was definitely helpful. And I was hitting up vets, and they say things don't happen to you, they happen for you. And going back to New York City was a great experience for me on a lot of levels, on a personal level, on a business level. I mean, it was a great learning experience. And I survived it. I survived raising my kids.
Yeah.
In that situation.
Right.
How about colleagues like Bob Maida and those people? I mean, they're still they were out in Manhattan and Jersey and I mean, they must have been some help, at least some support.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Bob is like a brother to me. My dad was like an uncle to him. So Bob was sending me business. I'm trying to think, was Bob living in the city yet? Because he was in Virginia for many years outside of DC. Yeah, that's right.
I think he was, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he was back up in New York at that point. So yeah, he was sending me business. He did send me a lot of business. And so that was supportive. And, fortunately too, I had such a huge Palm Beach clientele. Where do Palm Beachers spend their summers? Outside of New York City, and they all have an apartment in New York City. Right. So, I definitely was getting the word of mouth up there. But I have to tell you, the dog owners in New York City are way different than they are in Florida.
Okay.
And
how so?
Okay, nobody wants to say no to their dog in New York City.
All right.
In Florida, they'd be like, "Do you have one of those shock collars?" So you were dealing with just a different mentality. And it was kind of funny. Like in Florida, I was the dog trainer they hired. And in New York City, and maybe there were trainers that came after me with those dogs. I don't know. I didn't encounter it. But in New York City, I'd be like the 4th, 5th, 6th dog trainer that they hired. Mm-hmm. So I almost felt like it became, party chat. Like, oh yeah, I had, 6 dog trainers. Like it was sometimes people, think they like to brag about how many dog trainers they had because their dog is so unique and so different and so untrainable, when usually it's just the owner that's untrainable, as you know.
100%.
Oh yeah, it is.
Just doesn't look good on a t-shirt.
And then no.
Sounds like some people training. Nobody knows what the hell we do for a living.
Yeah, exactly.
That is true. So yeah, it was a much different clientele than Florida.
Well, you ended up with you had some famous clients in Florida, but I think New York, you kind of get dialed into that. That's another thing. I mean, you get dialed into that sort of world, and then that branches out, right? They tell their friends, or somebody says, "Oh yeah, you trained so and so's dog," blah blah blah. So, I laugh when I see like websites like, oh, here are all my famous clients. I'm like, those people are about as screwed up as everybody else. They're no different than
Absolutely.
like their dog, and their dog doesn't know like who they are.
No, it's true.
And sometimes these people have lives that are so insane that they don't even, it's not even them. They have a dog, but you're not even training them. You're training some, I've worked with like the personal chef somehow ended up in charge of the dog, and that's who I'm doing the appointments with, So it is a different world. I mean, I worked in downtown San Francisco. I worked in Santa Rosa, California, which is, the wine country. And now we're all over the place, but we have, it's a varying, it is definitely geographic, city versus suburbs. That whole thing is a totally different, kind of a whole different dynamic. You have to be a chameleon almost.
Yeah.
You can't say, this is the way it's done. I do this way. I do it this way every time. And if you can't do it, then, move on to the next one. Right.
Yeah, it's true.
So it is different. Yeah. So then did you shut the business in Florida completely down, or were you like, you had it somewhat on like kind of a life support of well, I know there were, I know there were some,
my
domestic concerns. Yeah.
Yeah. My ex-husband at the time was, running it. And, unfortunately there were a lot of pissed off people in my absence. And after he ended up leaving Florida also. We had to sell the house because we were getting a divorce, and I wasn't able to come back to Florida because Sarah was sick and we were in New York City. I mean, she has a rare autoimmune disease. So, I was stuck in New York City, but, we were there. I was staying. So I could have come back to Florida and had my business, but Sarah's autoimmune disease was so complex. And this was, 15 years ago. They've learned a lot in the last 15 years, but at the time they didn't know much about her autoimmune disease. So, and in Florida, what had happened was, backing up, the first 3 years of her life, she had been showing symptoms of the disease, but they were never presenting all at the same time. So like she had these rashes. So we went to the dermatologist, and the dermatologist said, I don't know what it is. It comes and it goes, it comes and it goes, and that was that. And the vision issue, that was misdiagnosed as something different. And then she would spike these high fevers, and her pediatrician said, I don't know, her blood work is this, and, it's gone away. So I guess we're okay. So nobody in Florida had any clue what was wrong with her. It was only until we got to New York. So why am I finally have these doctors that know what's going on with her. And mind you, this was Cornell Medical Center, and this was a new disease to them too. So I wasn't leaving that. I was, sticking close to Cornell because granted, it was a new disease to them, but it's a new disease to everybody. So why am I going to leave the doctors that, are Cornell doctors to come back to Florida? I mean, when nobody, even now, you talk to regular doctors and you mention the disease and I never heard of that. No, doc, you haven't, and that's okay.
How old is she now?
She's 19.
Yeah,
and she rides horses.
I saw, that she's like a horse person.
Yeah,
Right? So,
yeah,
that's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
so
she's a pretty cool kid. I mean, she jumps these horses, and she's blind. I mean, she's considered legally blind, so she has no vision in one eye, very low vision in the right eye. She can't drive. She'll never be able to drive. You don't want her driving.
No.
But she jumps horses.
Can't be much worse than some people I see. Yeah.
One of them sitting right beside you in a podcast right there. If you want to go for something that'll make you pucker up, getting a ride with, get in a car with him in Aruba or some freaky place where
oh my gosh,
he drives like this with the foot and the gas at the same time. I got whiplash. I got ringworm. I don't know what happened.
Oh my God, I have a friend that drives like that.
Yeah.
Four girls, we get together usually annually, and we're in the car, and it's like this the whole time.
Yeah.
And then whoever's in the back seat, we're looking at each other, cracking up. And she's like, "What's so funny? Oh, that thing. You know, she has no clue we're driving. It's not calming and soothing.
Every time I go visit him, I got to find out what kind of car he's got so I can order aftermarket extra oh shit handles everywhere.
That's
hilarious.
Yeah, it is.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So she jumps these horses. Like,
that's wild.
It is pretty wild. She's a tough cookie. She's very tough.
Cool.
Yeah.
How many trainers have you like started in their career, do you think?
I don't know. Quite a few of them are not training anymore. I would say like 22, 23.
Wow, yeah. So you go back to your dad. So you start like a family tree from there, and you branch out and look at Bash, look at Brian, look at the accomplishments that a lot of these people have done. I mean, Brian is very accomplished in his career. Also on TV, I think at one point earlier.
He was.
And
Matt.
And then Brian trained with Barbara Woodhouse, didn't he? There's some connection between the two of them. Or is there a connection between the two of them? Let's say I have heard that there's a connection between the two of them, right? And then Bash, Debra is, he was like the dog trainer to the stars in New York City. So they say, I remember sitting on an airplane reading some airline magazine, and they showed like the Christian Dior something or another party in the Hamptons, and there's Bash at this.
There's Bash,
party, at this party in his tux and everything, you know. So I think in my career, it's got to be in the 80s or so, you know, of people. A lot of them are still training. So that all comes from it. I still teach a lot of the things that your dad taught me. You know, maybe not so much the training end of it, but definitely a lot of the business stuff that he taught me have stood the test of time. There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely.
And it is a profession. You can pull up stakes, and if you're willing to bust your ass in a new place, you can put food on the table.
Yeah.
Shane, I mean, you started out, I mean, you didn't tell this story, but I remember Shane getting himself started. He used to tape his business card to cereal boxes in the grocery store.
No, I would put them in the top.
Yeah.
So like just in the rare, just maybe that somebody opens up that cereal box and my card flies out and they go, "How about it? It's a sign. Our dog's an asshole. There's a dog trainer in my cereal box." It never ever worked.
That's hilarious.
But I tried it.
You tried it. It might work. It might work.
It cost me nothing, you know. And
that's hilarious.
We used to fly our apartments. Like, you know, if you go to back in the day, you go to a concert and there's a flyer in your windshield. Well, we'd go out to the whatever concert or whatever event was happening, and everybody'd have a dog trainer little thing in their windshield when they came out.
Yeah.
That's
here.
before they would regulate it, and you have to have a permit to do it and all that crap now. So,
yeah.
But I'd try any damn thing.
Yeah. So
Certainly
if you hustle, you got, you know, you're not, and it's low startup, right? I mean, you got 99% of the tools you need right up here. So
absolutely,
you take that and move that to the next place. I mean, I have trainers, you know, that decide, I want to move out of Nashville. I want to go to Portland, Oregon. We have one that did exactly that. He just picked up, moved to the next place, and he's doing well in Portland now.
Yeah.
It is.
I got a question because I've got 16 I think 15, 16 full-time trainers.
For you.
All of them amazing, strong, educated, independent women. And I've got 2 guys on the team other than myself. And so I'm curious, like, even before, I mean, now things are a little bit different now, but like when you first started, like, where did you find the inner authority to go into somebody's house? And because most, like, with my trainers, a lot of them are young, and if I send them into some ex-Marine guy, something or other, they're like, oh, what is this 20-year-old little girl going to teach me? Blah, 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 blah. And I just tell them, I say, you just shut them up with your results. You pick up the leash, you solve the problem that they couldn't fix, and that equalizes you. But how did you overcome, or did you ever get faced with those issues, for one? And 2, how did you overcome some of those as a young woman in the business of standing in people's living rooms teaching them?
I don't think I ever remember really encountering that.
Okay.
I mean, husbands typically don't really listen. I mean,
yeah, right.
I'm not talking about my ex-husbands. I'm talking about the doggone husbands I've worked with. Right. They don't want to be bothered with it. That actually inspired my book, Woman's Best Friend, Choosing and Training the Dog That's Right for You, because women ask for directions, men don't.
Right.
So, that, and I don't think it was necessarily because I was a woman. I think it was just, they got it. The dog's listening. And even I encounter it today, like, you show them how to hold the leash, and it's like, it's white noise. They don't hear it. And they'll do it for like 2 seconds. They're like, yeah, I got this. This is good.
Right.
So, and I never took it as I was a young kid, because I was a young kid. I was really, when I started out, I've always mostly dealt with women. It's only in the last, I think, 10 years that men, they're not the majority of my clientele, but they definitely, I mean, I remember years ago, probably the first 20 years, I mean, maybe I had like a handful of men I worked with. Mm-hmm. Now I get men that call for dog training, whereas before, it was like the handful of like single men, single dads that, got a dog or something. It was very rare that I worked with men.
Yeah. Our business is very much women, and I always found too, it was kind of both sides. Like if there was a person in the home that felt some kind of way because of somebody's gender, again, the results equalize everybody, but also, with our client base being so much or so heavily female dominated, it's so empowering for them to come in, because the customer's version is, oh, well, you're a big guy and you got a deep voice, and of course they're going to listen to you. And I'm like, well, here's somebody just like you that just did it right in front of you, and it's so empowering too. So I mean, I try to make sure my folks are at least empowered on both sides. Don't take no shit off nobody, and empower everybody,
I will tell you though, as far as the man thing goes, and you guys probably haven't, I mean, maybe from the women that work for you, but there have been times where I've encountered men that like tried to scam me out of money or whatever, or just, bullshit, Oh, am I allowed to curse on this
you say
podcast?
You say whatever you want.
That, like, I would think to myself, like, you would never have pulled this BS on Captain Haggerty. And there were a handful of times where it was like, because I'm a woman, they think they're going to, snake me out of my money, and I did have I had one big situation where I think the guy thought I was just going to like roll over. And I remember my dad, you mess with a bull, you get a horn up your ass. And I went after him.
Yeah.
And
I can't imagine anyone messing with Captain Haggerty.
No, they never did. They never did.
I never saw it.
No, I do remember there was one time where I had a client and I was dealing mostly with the woman, and then she had the baby, and then the husband, and he was bitching and complaining. I don't know what his problem was. Like, I don't remember then, and even back then, now and back then, I mean, this was 25 years ago. That, like, I was like, where are you coming from? Like, what is your deal, dude? And my dad got on the phone with him. Took care of it. It's all cleared up. Really? Oh, okay. And I mean, there were a few times where my dad would be like, "You want me to talk to them?" Yeah, because
Oh my gosh.
that was that. All was well. So, but yeah, and that definitely was like the woman thing, you know,
Yeah.
or the young
it
kid
drives
thing.
me nuts, man. I'm like, it's so, I don't know. I don't know. I've always been, just raised by a single mom, and I've been, there's always been girl power. It's like, go do your thing, man. Ain't nothing stopping you.
I found, I mean, the business was, I mean, when I started going to conferences and things like that, it would be 80-20, right? 80% women. And I don't know if that's just the conferences, because it's the same thing that like men don't ask for help, or not. But, and of course our phone calls. I mean, I have a database now of every call that's ever came in, ever since we started this incarnation of the company. So I have a database that's hundreds of thousands of people of the initial call that came in, and it's also got to be about 80-20. Shane geared his whole business when he started more towards women than men, right?
Oh yeah.
So
everything.
Yeah.
That was smart.
Everything looks like that.
And
too. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Sally says, "Love it."
All shiny and glittery. But hey, look, I mean, back in the day, when if my card was on the desk in a vet's office or somewhere, beside somebody else's, 9 times out of 10 is going to be the woman looking for it, and 9 times out of 10, at least. And I'm not saying every girl likes pink. I don't want anybody to hear me. You know what I mean? But statistically, most likely somebody's going to look at that card. It was because our old logo had the dog who had a little bow in her hair and her tongue was sticking out and it was cute. And but it made the phone ring. It worked.
Yeah, make the phone
ring. And then we support them. We educate them and stand behind them and all that good stuff. So it all worked out pretty good.
Yeah, I think we are probably more like 70-30, 60-40, my trainers now, but it's still more women than men at it. So not sure exactly how that comes about. But you got to be, and they're all business owners. So is a risk? Is it more willing to take the risk? More, I don't know what it is. I've never really gotten that how that worked out.
Well, I think too, like in my dad's heyday in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, it was definitely the dog trainers that were out there training dogs professionally were men. But then if you'd go to your local obedience club, it was middle-aged women whose kids have left the home, and they were traditionally the stay-at-home mom because of that era. And so I think those were a lot of the people that were showing up at the conferences initially, were the club trainers, the trainers that were volunteers at the local AKC obedience club. And now, in the last 20, 30 years, more women are out in the workforce, and they're more, and dog training has become more of an accepted profession, career, that more women are getting into it because, they love dogs as much as guys, and not for nothing, I think guys have more chutzpah and they're more likely to go out there and start a business than women are. And not for nothing. Like, I look back and I think I've spoken to you about this, John. Like, if I hadn't spent the last 19 years, 23 years, my son's 23, raising my kids, my career would be in a completely different place. But I was taking time to take care of my kids, as a single mom. So
it's a great gig for a single mom.
It's a great gig for a single mom.
I've been a single dad, and luckily he was old enough to stay home for a few hours at a time. But I, get him started on something or doing something, and off I go. Take two, 3 clients, come back, go back and forth. You can't do that. You can't do that at a 9 to 5.
No, you definitely can't.
There's nothing better than owning your own schedule and making a good living at it. Being able to make ends meet and not be it's. But it's also the go-getters. I mean, it's not like that for everybody. We all see these companies come and go, pop up one day, gone the next, and most of them call and ask for jobs at the end of it all.
Yeah, we see. I mean, if you, Babette, if anybody ever got a hold of our, if anybody got a hold of our entire lifetime text history. I mean, I won't hear from Babette for 2-3 months, and then I just get a name, nothing else, just a text with a name, as in like, you ever hear of this motherfucker? Right? So I'm like, yeah, I heard of them, or no, I haven't heard of them. But then I look them up. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. So that I used to be really dialed into it. Not as much. I'm so focused on what I'm doing and the direction I'm taking. But it's still interesting. I mean, there are a lot of characters in this business. Also, that is for sure.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, there are.
Yeah, and anybody that has had I mean, when I do have the clients that had the dog trainers before, I hear just the stories of sometimes not so much about the dog training they did as just the general story about that person. And I mean, and I'm sure they have their stories about me too. I ran into somebody few years back. It always stuck with me. I was in San Francisco when I ran into an old client of mine, and she said, yeah, she goes, how's the dog? Great. And she goes, man, we still talk about you all the time. And it's not about the dog training. It's like about like just stupid stuff that I might have said or did or whatever in their house. Or it is the dog. Like that, the dog will do something or they'll do something and they'll say, nope, remember John said this or John said that. So it's pretty funny. But she said, yeah, that's a great, I mean, to have an impact on people's lives. You're just a dog trainer, but you're taking something that, I mean, the dogs we work with, it's something that is causing massive stress, discord, all kinds of problems in the house. You can go in and you can fix it. That's literally, it's life-changing for people.
Yeah.
I love when you walk in the room and the dog just goes straight to place.
Oh, yeah.
Never even touched it. They just walk up and they go, uh-oh, that's different.
He's here.
I'm going to go over here and lay down until I figure out what the hell's going on here. And they go, how did you do that? You just walked in the room. I'm like, hey, man, it runs down the leash.
Yep. How many, if you took the three of us combined, how much money would we have if we said, I wish I had $1 for every time somebody said, can you just move in? Can you just
God, yeah. We wouldn't be training dogs anymore.
Yeah. Does it work on husbands? Does it work on wives?
Absolutely.
Yeah. That would be.
I always tell them we smack the kids in the back of the head as positive reinforcement for the dogs. I'm kidding. Of course, I'm kidding.
Of course.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe not. I don't know.
So what? You're still. You're still full blown at it, right? I mean, what's your dog training schedule these days?
It's lighter than it used to be. Not way later, but it's later. But I like it like that. Like I'm busy enough. Like I just, I'm 56 and I came back to Florida and I wanted to enjoy life, doing some real estate, some investing and doing stuff for my own self. Mm-hmm. And I'm actually turning everything more my training. I'm concentrating less on doing the in-home privates and the group classes and moving everything online because I want to work remotely. Like it looks like Shane, are you in an RV?
He is.
Yeah. See, that's what I want to do. I want to travel and I like to train people's dogs while I'm sitting on my tush with my headset in and walking people through it. And, COVID proved to me you can do it. So that is, I'm starting a podcast very soon. It's going to be called For Better Dogs with Babette Haggerty. Cool. And so, I'm going more in that area, and I'll continue to I don't think I'll ever stop in-home lessons because I do enjoy it. I really do enjoy it. Plus, being in West Palm Beach, I get to go to some pretty cool houses and I get to meet some pretty cool people, and it's, there's something to be said for going to someone's house and, the chef is whipping you up some lunch, and it's just cool to like hang out and be a fly on the wall, like I had this guy back in December, he's a billionaire. And, if I mentioned his name, you'd know exactly who he is and his businesses, and just sitting and listening to him talking to people and, looking at the pictures, in his living room of his friends, his neighbors, it's just, it's cool. And, you never know what you're going to learn too. I'd sit and listen sometimes, like, what stock are they trading today? Or,
wow.
it's just, and it's just, it's a nice environment, and, you go there for an hour, you get some lunch, you talk to the people, you straighten out the dog, you leave and you come back, and, their check's always good,
Yeah.
So,
I tell you
so
what,
I don't think I'll ever stop.
More of those checks bounce from people that they shouldn't than people that you think they would,
You're right about that.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Is true.
So do you have a no list at this point? Like any specific, I've got a list one day that I might divulge if I ever get just, win the lottery or something. But like, do you have anything on any particular breeds or types of clients or, like what do you, is there anything that you can talk about that you want to talk about, or do you want to keep that list quiet?
Yeah. I'll divulge one or two of that list. So, from being on the phone, answering the phone for so long, I mean, there was a long time where I didn't, but now that I'm back to answering the phone, and even the people I've trained to answer the phones for me, you filter them out. It's like, I'm really booked right now. Try Joe Blow down the street, politely tell them to buzz off.
Yeah.
So, that kind of filters it out right there.
Isn't that amazing though, how much you can tell from hello?
Oh God. Yeah.
When I was training my office manager, we just sat in the car for a week together, and she just listened to me answer phone calls.
Yeah.
And all I need is hello. And they get one or two spiels. If I know it's not going to hit, you hit them with the price first, quick little 3-second synopsis. Okay. All right. Talk to you later. Bye. And she was like, I don't even know how I know, other than having answered 10,000 freaking phone calls.
Sure.
I just know there's a vibe.
And I remember, I'll never forget, I was at Westminster with my dad, and this was in the early 90s. So I'm returning phone calls. I've got a piece of paper and I'm returning phone calls from a payphone. I guess I must have been using, remember those telephone credit cards you had? Yeah. I must have been calling like that, and I was calling my people, calling in my answering machine, pressing the code. And I remember I was on the phone, and my dad is at the payphone next to me, returning his phone calls. And he's like, she's wasting your time. Hang up that damn phone. And I'm like, yeah, but Dad, you don't understand. I'd be like, let's go. And I'd be like, okay, ma'am, I'm so sorry. I have to get going, and hang up the phone. And of course, he was right. And he could, we had this joke going before he moved to Florida. He called it the 3,000-mile diagnosis. I'd call him up and I'd be like 10 words into okay, Dad, I've got this situation. And it got to the point where it wasn't about the dog. It was about the people. And he'd be like, blah, 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 blah. And I'd be like, really? Yes. I'm like, okay. And sure enough, it was exactly what he said,
Right.
And when I didn't listen to him, I'd be like, damn it, he was right. And when I did listen to him, I was like, okay, he was right,
Yeah.
So I filter a lot of people like that. Yeah, there are some breeds of dogs that I don't want to work that hard anymore.
Yeah.
And if you're coming to me with a large dog, a full grown, intact, aggressive dog. I mean, there are a couple of breeds out there that, I'm like, they just think they're aggressive. Okay, so I have a fondness for German Shepherds. I have German Shepherds. I've had German Shepherds for years. For me, I have found that, when people call me up with an aggressive German Shepherd, when you go to correct a German Shepherd, they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I will never do that again.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with that, because I know that they're going to wimp out on me anyway. And they're really not going to, they're good. They think they're tough, and they're not.
The big
there are certain
cats.
breeds. Yes. And then there's some breeds that are like, oh yeah, bitch, bring it on. So those breeds, I refer them out. There's actually a Sit Means Sit franchise locally, Bob Burnell, and super nice guy. I really like him. I send them to him. He's a retired cop. He takes it. I'm like, okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
So there are certain breeds that I don't want to take, and there's just certain problems I don't want to deal with.
Right.
Well, and you learn, unfortunately, you usually learn those lessons the hard way, right?
Oh yeah.
You learn, I should not have done that. So
I had the first dog that ever sent me to the emergency room. God, I was probably a year or two in training, and it was a black chow. So you asked me if there's certain breeds. I mean, I never get calls for chows anyway, but because nobody has
It's
them.
rare. Yeah.
If I've had 5 phone calls for chows in the last 35 years, that's probably a lot. But
That's
Yeah.
when
true.
I have had them, I'm quadrupling the price because I'm like,
Yeah.
no.
They're tough
I'm
dogs.
naming the
Tough
price
dogs.
that they're not going to pay because I don't want
Exactly.
the dog. So
Right.
cutest puppies
Yeah.
in the world.
Yeah.
How many trips to the emergency room have you made? I've only had one emergency room trip.
I think I've had 2. I don't think it's been 3. I had 2. The second one was actually a fight that I broke up. That it was actually my own dog that ended up nailing me, because what had ended up happening was it was a golden retriever, believe it or not, that started the fight. I went to grab the golden, but there was poop right there, and I didn't realize there was poop. And when I pulled the golden back, I slipped and fell backwards. And my ex-husband hadn't grabbed my shepherd in time. So when I was falling back, the shepherd came in to nail the golden, but I was pulling the golden back, but my leg got in the way. And
that sucks, but it doesn't count. I mean, how many dogs?
Right.
I mean, most of the trainers that get bit in the consultation because they let their guard down. I got bit in the consultation. That was the time I went to the
got bit
hospital.
one time.
Yeah,
and it was a consult.
And I was bit by a black chow. I didn't go to the hospital, but that was the other bite of note. Otherwise, you get nipped at here and there, but it does happen.
Yeah.
And usually, I mean, when you say you never make that mistake twice, do you?
Oh no,
right?
No,
you never. It's a good learning. Some sharp teeth.
My pride hurt way worse than that bite did.
Absolutely, yeah. Well,
I was there because the dog bit somebody, and this was before I had any staff. It was just me. I was doing all the marketing, all the phone calls, all the training, everything. His last client, Friday evening, all my brain's going steak, beer, steak, beer, beer, steak, steak, beer. And so I'm sitting there walking this dog around the yard, and she's like, hey, you want to walk the dog back up to the house? I said, sure, whatever. My head wasn't there. And the second I touched that leash, he come up and got me right in the side, all 4 canines in, rah, 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 rah. And I was like, son of a bitch.
Yeah.
He got me. And you ruined my shirt. I got bit and I got to buy a new shirt. What the hell?
The dog that put me in the emergency room, Possum, vet tech's dog, a huge Rottweiler. He took my shirt, the whole sleeve off. It was almost comical.
Ooh.
I signed the contract before I went to the hospital and got a check.
Yeah.
Then I went to the hospital. They probably would have paid me anything at that point. Just yeah. It was something. So yeah, you learn failure is an awesome teacher. That is.
Oh yeah.
I say that all the time.
Yeah. So. That chow. That was a learning lesson on so many levels. And he was a smart dog. And actually I was the dog's last stop. The dog had gone after the groomer, had gone after the vet. And he was still a puppy. He was like 6 months of age. And he had come to my group class, and he went after me in the group class. And so they hired me to come for private lessons. And of course I did everything stupid, but took my eyes off of that dog. The dog wasn't on the leash. Took my eyes off the dog. And what happened was the dog did something, and I gave him a verbal correction. This dog was so freaking smart. I gave him a verbal correction. I'll never forget it. And he was over here. And I turned to the owners and I start telling them, what I did or why I did it. That son of a bitch comes running up after me. Boom, boom, boom. And I will tell you, I think watching my dad doing bite work and doing schutzhund saved my butt that day, because when he came, I just handed him my arm.
And he
went boom, boom, boom. And he came off of that arm, and I gave him the other arm, and he went boom, boom, boom. And then he grabbed my leg, and that's when I said, and I had my back up against the wall, literally. And I was like, oh, shit. And that's when they were finally able to get him off of me. But there was freaking blood everywhere. And I was
No.
That's amazing.
And they put and the dog's next stop was the vet. That he sat there for 10 days in quarantine, and they put him down. And yeah, I mean, but they told me flat out and looking back on it, like, even if I was the trainer that I am today and would be taking him on, I mean, he was 10 weeks and going after the groomer, 12 weeks going after the vet. Like, it wasn't good.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't come out right.
No.
I guess that's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
They're not all created equally.
Well, so what like would you say? I mean, not only dog training, but like what words of advice at 56? You said of
56
of making your own way and making your own hay. Would you give somebody that thinks I want to do it, but I don't know if I can. I don't know. Yeah, other than just do it. But
you know what? Just do it. And I think one thing that I learned, especially with my daughter, when I found out she was blind, it was pretty upsetting to me. But then fast forward a couple of years later, when she ended up sick, I remember I had been asked a couple of times when people heard like how I ended up back in New York and, all the ripple effect and the tsunami. It was a shitstorm. That someone asked me, well, how did you do it? And I just thought about it for a second. I'm like, I just kept going. I didn't look where I was, because I think if I paused and said, oh my God, like, my ex-husband quit paying the mortgage, they want to foreclose on the house, we've got to get the house sold, the real estate market has collapsed, I left my 6-figure business in Florida, my daughter's in and out of the hospital, I'm living with my aunt in like a 3-room apartment, like, I'm on freaking food stamps, like, and I grew up like, I had a nice upbringing, like my aunt said, I wasn't supposed to be on food stamps, but like, that's where I was. And, wow. I never sat and looked at like, oh, my daughter's really sick. She's in and out of the hospital. She's in ICU again. My poor son is like getting bounced around. And, so if I stopped and looked at where I was, I think I would have been like, I don't know. I would have been a basket case, but I just kept going. And I remember my dad had told me, and I was thinking about this the other day. Remember, he told me a story about, there was a quote he used to tell me, some famous general or something or other, that said something like, they're coming up in front of me. I'm not going to do it justice. I'm going to totally paraphrase, but it's, you're in battle and they're coming up in front of you. They're coming up behind you. All my men are down and, there's only, and I have no ammunition left. There's only one thing I can do, and that is to attack. And, you just keep going. And I remember there have been times in my life that, my dad would say, you just have to keep going. Just keep going. Just keep going. And, you just have to keep going, put one foot in front of the other, and, don't stop. And, I've had a lot of pivots in my life. I ended up back in Florida. I wasn't planning on coming back to Florida. I took a sabbatical from my business for a month to come down and clear my head after my second divorce. I laughed because I didn't think I'd have 2 divorces, but that's okay. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, it'll be fine. I gave them all raises. They're going to have a great time without me. COVID didn't put me out of business. So I'm gone for a month. I'll be on the phone with them every day. Boy, was I wrong. So yeah, so like I had to pivot and I just keep going, don't stop. Just keep going.
Move forward.
Yeah.
Forward progress. Make forward progress. Yeah, for sure.
And sometimes it's 1 step forward and 2 steps back. And sometimes it's to the right and to the left. And, you have to make U-turns or whatever, but you just have to keep going.
Yeah. I've been there.
I have a friend who's told me a long time ago, she actually told me this in the middle of, it was after my divorce from my children's father. And he and I have been back and forth to court over the years. And I don't know, something was going on. And she said to me, Babette, the best revenge is living well. And I was like,
True that.
Yeah.
Yep. For sure.
Preach,
For sure.
preach.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a ton for coming on and the time and everything.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks for your friendship over the years and your
Thank
dad,
you.
of course, and everything. And we got a few more years left in us. Who knows what the
I
next
appreciate
Yes,
your
we
dad.
do.
I appreciate your dad too, though, even though I never met him, but he
Yeah.
taught this guy, and this guy helped change my life too. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
His teachings have grown legs, and
Yeah.
I take a lot of pride in what I do, and respect the industry, and I respect the ability to make the living that I want to make, and I also respect that I didn't do it by myself. I had help along the way, and if he
Yeah.
didn't get helped by your dad, and now it's here again, and the people that I help with some of the same principles, I mean, it's still alive.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, John's taught me so much. So, it's
It's cool.
it's awesome. It is cool.
Well, thank you again. And
Thank you.
We'll be in touch. So,
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
I don't know,
You guys were
Shane,
great.
Yeah. Do you want any last words for Shane? Your sign off?
Be the person that your dog thinks you are.
Love it.
Or I'll kick your ass. No.
That's good.
Yeah.
I love it.
All right.
Be nice.
Take care. Thanks
All right,
again.
guys. Have a great
Okay.
day. I'll talk to you
Y'all
soon.
have a
Thank
good
you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Y'all be cool now.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this edition of the Butt Fixer Podcast. Stay tuned for more guests, more stories, and more butt fixes. Make sure you click, like, subscribe, and follow at all of the places where you stream podcasts.